Welcome, Kat. Um, welcome, Katla. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. How are you guys doing? I will be with you in a few minutes. Katla, did you receive my invite in the private message? Okay, Katla, it's on Discord PMs. I'll give a few more minutes for an email or somebody else to show up and it'll begin. Okay. You guys with me still? Um, Cat and Calla, I shall begin if you're ready. I see Calla. Are you trying to sign up? Okay, that's good, Calla. I just want to make sure that if anything happens to the Discord group, we can still stay in contact. Yes. Should I begin now, Calla, or do you want to give a few more minutes to finish that? Okay, let's begin. So this is going to be the 8th, yes, September 8th, 2022. Oh, we should open Google Maps as well. Do we have the right thing going? Do we already have the right thing? Oh, are we doing? What's going on? Oh, we have. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. All right. Um, somehow I got the thing going. So this one, okay. So now we're going to get out of studio mode for a moment and go into here. Um, so for today's adventure, we're going to go from London westward to Salisbury, which is down here actually. Is this? Yeah, this is Salisbury, which is in this part of the country. Let's see if we can get a map, another map. And you can see Salisbury in the this corner down here. You can see it above Portsmouth and west of London. And Salisbury is in the heart of Wiltshire, which is stereotypical West England, Southwest England. So back to our slides here. So for today, we're going to visit Salisbury Cathedral, and in addition to the cathedral tour itself, there they have the oldest working clock in the world, and we got a tour of the clock. It's been not really continuously running, but it has been running in stages since the 14th century. Um, and clockwork, as we now understand it, may have originated somewhere in Northern Europe and possibly in England. So this might be like literally one of the very first clocks in all of history, or at least mechanical, like whatever it is, kind of clocks. I obviously use water clocks and stuff for them, but um, and so he did that, and then we later in the day are going to have the a tour of the cathedral library, which is a very rare event. It's very difficult to get tickets to library tour. You have to be a member of English Heritage, which you can be even if you're not British citizen. And And but if you join up with English Heritage before you go over there, you get deals on certain places and special offers. And one of the offers, you can put your name and you get a lottery in the lottery. And one of the lotteries you can get is to go to a library tour. They have some very old books in there, obviously, um, like literally like 1,000-year-old books or something. We saw some of those. Also in the cathedral, um, they have a whole bunch of very medieval famous graves in there of, not quite kings, but like one layer below them. And they have one of the four remaining copies of Magna Carta. And I saw two of those in the British Library in London. There's one of them in Salisbury and then Cathedral, and there's one of them in Lincoln Cathedral. So I saw all of that. And and I definitely recommend going to Salisbury and the Cathedral if you're ever in the country. It's one of those recommended day trips. And then after all of that, I actually, at the end of the day, I had tickets to go inside the Stones tour of Stonehenge. And while I do not normally recommend visiting Stonehenge because you really can't get very close to it, there's only like this path that goes like a long distance away on the outside and all this. And it's very kind of expensive admission and all this, like $60 per person or something to see something from 500 feet away or something. It's not worth it. Um, yeah, it's much better to go to Avebury, which is completely free. It's much more impressive, much more interesting. But if you can get inside the Stones tickets, which you can only get if you go into the live in for the lottery, and then they only pick like 25, 30 people at a time for like literally 2 or 3 times a year, and that's it. But if you can do that, that is the way to do it. So that's what we did today. Got all that in one day. And then there's an extra special thing at the end, which we shall get to later on. So, um, let us begin. So this is our first slide. So this is the medieval clock demonstration. Tickets, we bought that. Let's see. Um, and so we had to, get on this train from Waterloo Station to, and then to another train, Basingstoke to Salisbury. And then I have the library tour here. Oops, probably shouldn't give away my name. But anyway, and then on the train there, they had a cheeky sign on the loo on the head. Please don't flush nappies, sanitary towels, paper towels, gum, old phones, unpaid bills, junk mail, your ex's sweater, hopes, dreams, or goldfish down this toilet. So I found that was funny. Um, and then this is the picturesque town of Salisbury, and the one of the many River Avens in this area. And River Avon is well known for being in Arthurian lore. Arthur passed through here somewhere. But the River Avon is well known for mostly two things. First of all, there are multiple River Avons throughout southwestern England and even into Wales. And the second thing it's known for is that the name Avon is the Gaelic name or word for a river. So the River Avon is actually the River. It's one of those many double names that exist in England, along with Cambridge, which is Bridge, and a whole bunch of other names like that. But we'll get to that later. But there's the River Avon down a side street. It was raining this day, so you had to kind of take shelter pretty early. But we now approach the cathedral, and there's like a whole cathedral district you go to where it's like you have to go through the walls and you actually to get to the cathedral and sort of walled off from the rest of the town. And so here's something en route. It might be interesting. I don't know. And as I was biding my time for the floor tour and the clock tour, I was walking around town a little bit. And this is the actual entrance to, or backside the entrance to the cathedral district. As I said, the cathedral actually has walls surrounding it. And it has gates and everything. And there is the cathedral itself. Salisbury Cathedral is the largest cathedral in England, and I think the second largest cathedral in Western Europe. And it's almost entirely built on marsh and like lowlands and wetlands. And so it has an extensive set of piles and pillars that are driven into the ground in order to reach bedrock. And then the foundation is built on top of that, and then the cathedral is built on top of that. Um, and if you look online, you can see a video that shows that there's actually like a giant dipstick they put in the ground to see what the water level is, um, and make sure that the cathedral doesn't flood. This whole series of waterworks underneath all of this, like pipes and cisterns and stuff, to prevent the whole area from flooding. That was built during the Middle Ages. And here's again an example of some flint built into the wall. You can see it looks like glass. It's like a glassy complexion, which is fascinating to me, with very sharp edges. St. Anne's Gate of the Architects. And now we go inside for the clock tour. And they demonstrated that over there. And the cathedral itself is very beautiful inside. It's amazing, stained glass and architecture and all that. Now, originally, Salisbury was the town of Sarum, which is built on a nearby hill. And you can actually go up to there to the archaeological site of Old Sarum. And that town dates to like pre-Roman times. But during the Middle Ages, when they wanted to build a cathedral there was some sort of dispute with the local landlord or something, baron, and they then decided to move the cathedral down into the surrounding flat plains outside the town. And that's where the modern Salisbury Cathedral is. And I think until like 1984 or something like this, very, very recently, Salisbury was the official name of Salisbury was actually New Sarum. And Salisbury is just like a kind of common name, but it's not like the real name of the place. And only in 1984 did it actually become Salisbury. So Salisbury, people would call that for centuries, but it's not really Salisbury until 1984. Um, okay, I'll wait a few minutes. Kala? and I'm just going to narrate ahead a little bit. But so there are many people with the green sash. Those are the docents, like tour guides, and you can sort of pick up any tour you want. Um, just mill around and enjoy a tour. Um, Let me know when you come back, Kella. Oh, that sounds delicious, Kella. Okay, so we're just looking over some pictures. Astra Viator et rerum visis nota. Okay. And then we joined our own tour. This lady here was our tour guide. She is a former mayor of the city of Salisbury, and she had a bunch of interesting history about the city. Salisbury, England guide, yes. Okay. As you might expect from a medieval cathedral, the yeah, stained glass was spectacular in many cases. I want to say, I'm not sure if this is true, but if you see these darker columns in places, this is a special kind of marble imported from Italy or something. I also seem to recall that some of the stained glass was damaged during the war, so they had to replace it in the 50s. Cathedral contains many well-known graves from Salisbury and English history, and I do not recall them all right now, but they were there. Shown the report bishop between 1257 and 62. During his episcopate, the cathedral was consecrated on 30 September 1258 by Boniface, Archbishop of Canterbury. He founded College of St. Nicholas, Defoe. This is one of the finest 13th century tombs in Britain. Mm, that is very fine indeed. Looks like it got damaged, but it's impressive to think that's almost 800 years old. the intricacy of the masonry here is impressive. If you look up here, looks like we have like a bat, a person, and some flowers. Some interesting stuff going on. When things were at their worst, he would go up and down in the trenches, cheering the men. When danger was greatest, his smile was loveliest. In proud and unfading memory of Edward Wyndham Tennant, 4th Battalion Grenadier Guards, eldest son of Lord and Lady Glenconner, who passed to the fullest life in the Battle of Assam, 22 September 1916. That's coming up in a couple months. Age 19. He gave his earthly life in such a manner as he set great store by. The honor of his country and his home. Jeez. Helps you rich to get buried in the cathedral, but yeah. Um, Here's the modern baptismal font, like a mirror finish. Welcome, Nemo, to Salisbury Cathedral. And that's pretty much the interior. Now here's the cloisters while we wait for the library tour. I think these might be the largest cloisters in England. And then we go towards the copy of Magna Carta, which we had previously seen in the British Museum when we were in London. Yes, some of it does, Nemo. It's very good. Um, Here's one of the builders of the cathedral making his mark. Now, one of the things you can do if you go to the cathedral is the spire tour. You can walk all the way up to the top of that. It's a lot of steps, like 150 steps or something. And then apparently you can see the entire surrounding countryside. I didn't have time for that day, so. In memory of Brigadier General Robert Montague Poole, all these 7th Hussars, kinsmen of the founder, 1866 to 1938. It's more modern memorial. If anybody has any questions, I can certainly answer them. And this is a well-known statue towards the entrance we saw earlier. And then it was 4 o'clock and time for the library tour. So you go up a special passageway and you end up here. And obviously the monks used to copy manuscripts back in the day. So we have some of the older ones here. And as I said, you have to be a member of English Heritage, and then you get an offer. Very limited time offer. They only offer, to enter a lottery, and they'll pick only like 10, 15, 20 people a few times a year, like 3 or 4 times a year, and you can get in if you get chosen. So I can recognize Galileum up there. Mary Galileum, so with Mary of Galilee. Uh, Termidios Finis, Termidios, and in the end, um, Neo Capoleos, Teo Capoleos, something datum at fundut minimum. I can barely read that. Strop Zenodens. This is obviously a Bible. Anno Domini, I see that. Something, something. Die, Dominate, Primina, Feltum, something, something. Day. Ooh, that's hard to read. Sancti Toma de Aquino Osdinia Pestiasto Super Quarto Libra something Pidarum o Opaza uh, Liciter Incipit. And this was a book about the crowning of, I think it's Charles II, King Charles II, um, who was brought in after the English Revolution, after Cromwell and all that. And his father got his head chopped off, of course, but then they brought him back to bring back the monarchy, and then he got deposed in the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which introduced the current um, royal dynasty. And that has connection where I live, of course, because I live um, near the Regicide Trail, which is where the judges who condemned King Charles to death for treason against England, during once they did that, they got in trouble, so they left the country and they ended up where I live, just a few miles away, and hid out in the forest basically for a while in the sort of semi-legal colony of New Haven, which is both. It was a sort of legal colony, but it was sort of outside the law. It was its own thing for a while. So this is sort of connected to me a little bit. And this book was basically all about the new king and all how he was great and all this kind of stuff, and it's basically intended to suck up for the new king. Or maybe that's actually, is that William of Orange? Looks like him, because that also looks like Queen Anne. I could be getting my monarchs mixed up. Of William and Orange, or William and Anne Faith, or like William and Mary, like no, the College of William and Mary, they're named after them. But I'm getting my monarchs confused. Oops, and that brings us to our next adventure. So once this was over, I had to cut it, and I took an Uber out to Stonehenge. And I met an interesting Uber driver. He had come from originally from I think the Philippines, and he had settled in Britain. And he was telling me about his life there, his life here, and his transition, and all this kind of stuff. So I had my Filipino taxi driver drive me out to here. So basically, if you normally visit Stonehenge, they charge you an arm and a leg, and you get to like stand about this far away and see it from distance. You get to walk around it, and you'll get to go near it. Normally they don't allow people to get too close. It used to be like before 2000, you could walk right up to it, but they get concerned with people vandalizing it and touching it too much and all this kind of stuff. So eventually they put a fence around it, and then you can only stand a distance now. And one of the main concerns they have is like the oils in people's hands will begin to erode away um, some of the rock. And there's actually some very ancient carvings on some of them, and they could be eroded away. And actually, some people in more modern times that would make their own, like, carve their own graffiti into this stuff, and so they just don't allow you near it anymore. But if you get inside the Stones tickets, if you're an English Heritage member, you can go inside. That's what we're gonna do now. Um, One of the things I most remember about being here was how cold and windy it was. It was like really windy because you're on the plains of Salisbury, and it's just gray. Towards the end of the day, it's gray and it's damp and it's cold. I was freezing to death in like 20, 30 mile per hour winds blowing away. Um, and then we are given a tour of Stonehenge by a guy named Chris, which you'll see in a moment, who is an actual archaeologist who works on the site. A really interesting guy. Um, and then when you visit it, you couldn't touch any of the stones. It's literally illegal against the law in the UK to touch the stones of Stonehenge. And there's actually cops, actual police officers, standing all the way around, and they're watching you. And if you touch the stones, they'll arrest you. I'm told, don't touch the stones. And they repeatedly tell you, don't touch the stones, don't touch the stones. Because they will literally arrest you. Um, And now Stonehenge is owned by by basically the crown. It's basically crown land at this point. It's owned by English Heritage, but English Heritage is a quasi-government organization in some ways. It's effectively crown land. As opposed to Aviary, which we went to a couple weeks ago, which is entirely private. So you can catch those stones 8 days a week. You can walk up to them, you can sit on them, but not this one. So I was very lucky I could get both the library tour, which is a very rare, lottery ticket basically to get in there, and the Inside the Stones tickets on the same day. I was actually planning to do it 2 different days, but then I was able to compress it into one day. So then we approach. I don't think anybody told the crows they couldn't touch the stones, though. They're kind of hard to arrest, I guess. There's the center trilith, which is the tallest and biggest, obviously. One towards the center left there, that's actually concrete. They had to re-erect the stone. It was lying on the ground and it couldn't support itself, so they had put this concrete insert in there so it stands up. Some of this is kind of semi-reconstructed. um, yes, exactly, Cal. That's the idea. Now, of course, Avebury is just as old. I mean, but it's on private land, so it's okay. Different rules for different things. You can't stand on the stones. You can't lean against them. Just don't touch them. They get them saying like every 5 minutes. Um, it was very blustery and cold that day. I will say that. The morning was almost warm for English standards, but by the afternoon it was just cold. And there's Chris in the center, our tour guide. And you can kind of see in the background there's the van. That's a police van. They're watching you. There's a couple of them all the way around. Now the larger stones on the outside are local, but the you see the smaller inner stones are called the blue stones. I don't know why, since they don't look very blue, but that's what they're called. Those are from the Preseli Highlands in Wales, about 200 miles away. Looking between two blue stones. Now there's a highway like a couple hundred feet across the way from this. So there's a lot of traffic nearby, unfortunately. But that gives you a vision of the, Sauls or the Wiltshire countryside through there. And there you can kind of see, I forget what that's called. There's like two stones on the outside, and nobody knows quite what they're aligned with. The main circle is definitely aligned with the equinox or the solstices, especially the winter solstice. But there's two stones. I think they're guard stones or something, guide stones. And nobody, they're obviously aligned, but nobody knows quite what. So that's one of them. And cattle in the background. Closest anybody has really come to why it is where it is this is pretty close to the headwaters of all the major rivers in the area. They were Avon, or at least the Salisbury Avon, the Kennet, which goes up to Avebury, and a couple other major rivers that spread out the whole area of western inlet. So that's probably why it's here. Now, between those two stones, you see on the ground, is the altar stone, which it was never actually an altar, but that's what it's called. Um, which is the most unusual stone in the entire complex because it comes from Scotland. And why it comes from Scotland, nobody knows. It actually comes from like the top of Scotland. Came the entire distance down to of the British Isles. And nobody knows exactly how. There's a whole bunch of theories about that. But yeah, it's the most distant stone here. So, whatever that's worth. That's the A4, I think, in the background, which is the main east-west highway out of London to the west of England. Now here is, you can see there's like a hammer on the right and like a dagger on the left are what are believed to be Bronze-aged graffiti. Like somebody came later and carved their graffiti into it. And it's probably like, 3,500 years old. Um, and this is one of the reasons why you can't touch it, because eventually, if everybody touched everything, then this stuff would erode away. And then you have more modern graffiti on top. J. Hale WC something something. Probably like 19th century graffiti. That's why you can't touch it. 1817. And those are the blue stones in the middle and the Saracen stones on the outside. And that's one of the guide stones. Well, they gotta close at 6 o'clock, so we gotta get out of here actually. And this Inside the Stones tour happens after normal closing hours. So I took the taxi or the Uber up here, and we arrived at the visitor center. They're just closing up the visitor center, so you can't stay in there. And as I said, it's blistering cold outside, so you want to spend inside, but you can't. So you gotta stand cold in the outside and wait for your tour to arrive. And then you can see some of the tumuli or tumuluses, the burial chambers that are in the area. Good, there's a cult. There's a whole complex somewhere over there that are in the area. Most of those have not been excavated, so they're probably still tombs. Then, okay, so let's switch over to a map. Then, I was done for that, so I got a taxi back in the town. And, where are we? Down here. And, oops, keep on going. So I decided to have dinner at the Shah Jahan Indian restaurant, which I very, very, very strongly recommend. What's this? That's the main gate. Thank you. What is this? I have no idea what that is. Okay. But near the train station, I can find the train station. Yes, the Shah Jahan. You guys can see this, right? Yes, this place is amazing. It is ridiculously tasty. They have nice decor, impeccable service, and just absolutely ridiculously good food. A little pricey, but this guy, he's there to greet you. Yes, they're all fancy and nice, but this place was wow. This is 6 out of 5 stars. If you're ever in the area, you gotta visit this place, baby. Yeah. So it's right there, right next to the train station. Um, I know, Kellen. And I had really nice. It was like chicken with some kind of like peanut butter sauce or something. I don't know. It was amazing. And so much naan. And then I had some mimosas, and oh, it was so good. You could absolutely have a feast at that place. It's worth visiting Salisbury just to get the shot on. But so here's some of the menu. I looked at, yes. Um, was that on top? The Bahari chicken piaja? That was, there's so many good, but that was, yes. And some samosas. I mean, yeah. Please sanitize your hands. I like that sign. It's based on a well-known World War One recruitment poster of then King Edward, I think it was. And so now King Edward and his turban is telling you to sanitize your. That's some cheeky British humor there. Um, and of course, there's always a cat wherever you go. So there was a station cat at the Salisbury train station. Before we get there, I'm gonna jump up here for a minute. Nemo didn't see this one, but I'll let you see this one for a moment. It would be nice if they delivered across the ocean, Nemo, yes. uh, Please don't flush nappies, sanitary towels, paper towels, gum, old phones, unpaid bills, junk mail, your ex's sweater, hopes, dreams, or goldfish down this toilet. So this was on the train on the way in, on the toilet on the train on the way in. So I found that very, very cheeky British humor there. So here's the station cat. As we wait for our train. Now, here's the next adventure for our day. So basically, when I came back, there was some sort of problem with the train, and we had to stop at like I think the town was Basingstoke or something like this. And they made everybody get off. You're supposed to be directly from obviously Salisbury back to London at Waterloo Station, but they make you get off because there's some sort of problem with the train. And then I was there. I got on. I met some guy. I learned his name is Mike. And we're on the train, and he's like really nervous looking. And he's all dressed up in like a black tie and all this, and he has a bouquet of flowers. And I go up to him. I say, "What's happened? What's going on, man?" And he says, "The Queen died." Okay. Wow. Okay. You're going to like Buckingham Palace? Yes. So he's going to Buckingham Palace. That's what the flowers are for. And I say, "Can I accompany you? Can I go with you and have a flower?" Oh, sure, sure. So we're on the train going into London for the palace to pay our respects to the Queen. And then the train breaks down again. So we go from Salisbury to Basingstoke to Reading now. And now we get on a third train. It was supposed to be a 90-minute in, and it's not gonna be 90 minutes now. Um so so then we get on a train to Reading, and now Reading is just outside London. It's like just outside of city limits. And so the train we get on is like the super, super local train. It takes every single local stop, right? It takes 90 minutes to travel about 20 miles and about 30 stops. Literally like 33 stops to go through London from the outside of London to the in. And then he got very nervous and he was drinking a little bit and he was smoking a lot. And you're not supposed to smoke on train. But every time we stopped, and because this train stopped so often, like literally every 90 seconds we're stopping, right? The train gets up to speed, and it goes for a while, and it slows down. We just make a stop, and the doors open for 30 seconds, and we go back. And it goes back up to speed again, and it starts again, and breaks again, and we stop again. And it is on and on and on. And every single stop he made, he would get his lighter and cigarette ready, and as soon as the door opens, he lights up, takes one puff, you know, um, you know, puffs it out the door before it closes. And then, right, he extinguishes it. And then the next stop. And he did it for the next stop. And he did it for the next stop. And he was really nervous at the time. So we're doing like this, 30 stops along the way. And we encounter a Brazilian exchange student on the train. He was trying to also get into London, and he has like a boarding house or something, or a what's it called? Um, um, oh, what they're called? A hostel. He was trying to get into a hostel before midnight, and we weren't sure we were going to get into London for midnight at this point. This train was taking forever. Supposed to be a 90-minute train into London, was now turning into about 3 hours over three trains. So we Melho or Milo Hell, I forget his name is. So we met him along the way, and then we met another guy, and we hoped Mello, once we got off the train, we hoped he was gonna get to his hostel before midnight, but we didn't actually get off the train till like 15 after 11 or something. So he had like 45 minutes to get from the train station to where he's staying. Otherwise, yeah, he's gonna roam the streets that night. Okay. 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 Now London is not that bad a place to roam the streets at night, to be honest. You just get a very safe sense in that place. Like nothing really bad could happen to you in the middle of the night. You don't get that creepy vibe you get in New York or something. Um, so that's not the worst thing that happened, but he's gonna basically gonna have to. You might have to, right? And then there's another guy who came and they weren't coming along. We were just kept on meet people along the way, and it's just. And Mike was constantly, take two puffs and out the door, and we're off to the next stop. The whole way through. Um, and eventually we get to Waterloo Station, and he picks up another drink at a local pub. And then he knows how to get around town better than I do, so we take two tube trains. Um, and we eventually end up in Buckingham Palace at just before midnight, I think it was. And then the last trains out of London usually leave before midnight. There's like no overnight trains in the UK usually, with very few exceptions. But so once you're in there like 11:30, 12 o'clock, you're basically in town for the night. Okay. Um, and he was planning just to go in and lay the flowers and go back out again, but he's not coming out that night, so he figured he's gonna stay the night basically. Um, so we went to Buckingham Palace, and there's already beginning to be a crowd was gathering, and but it wasn't that big. I was told later on in news reports that it was went up to like 100,000 or something. But when we were there, it was probably a couple thousand, but it was not 100,000. You could easily get your way forward. And we went to the gates and laid some flowers and all that. And I comforted Mike in that moment. But and and then I stayed a few minutes, but then eventually I had to go. um, and I left him there, and he was just gonna stay the night and just sort of take it all in, obviously. And so I went back, and I arrived back at my place at like 1 a.m. that night. Um, so that was an interesting experience. So there's a couple more pictures. Um, so this is Trafalgar Square coming into the station, Waterloo Station, which is nearby. And then here's Buckingham Palace. This is the beginning of the crowds. It got huge, absolutely much, much huger later on. But and I guess that's it for tonight, guys. So if anybody has any further questions or comments or anything to say, we can leave it at that. Thank you, Kayla. I think we are done, Nemo, yes. Oh, it's okay, Nemo. I just was talking about visiting Buckingham Palace for the Queen's um death announcement, which will pop up later on in our journey. Part two to this. Is there any further comments or questions, Nemo? We will finish up. Okay. Well, I'll call it a night. Thank you for showing up, Nemo. And Katla and Kat.